Hi everyone, welcome back to Cooking with Teacher Pat. Today I'm going to show you guys how to make a popular breakfast item that's typically served in Hong Kong, and that's congee. And congee is also another name for rice porridge. In Cantonese we say chok, and in Mandarin it would be zhou. Now zhou is a little bit different from xi fan. Xi fan is plain porridge, and then zhou usually has some kind of filling. So today I'm going to teach you guys how to make 1,000-year-old egg with pork congee. In Cantonese, it's皮蛋瘦肉粥, and in Mandarin, it is皮蛋瘦肉粥. So let's go ahead and start. Let's talk about our ingredients. So the first thing that you're going to need that's really important is a crock pot. This may not be as traditional as you might think. This is how my mom used to make it for us, and I'm telling you, ever since I learned this way, I don't think I make chok or zhou in any other way, because I don't have to stand over the stove and stir it. This does everything for me. And what you're going to need is you're going to need a big knob of ginger. I already peeled it. You're going to need a 1,000-year-old egg. We'll talk about this in a little bit. You can have two if you like. This is not going to be a big batch, so I'm just going to do one, and that's all I have in my house anyway. You're going to need about 1/3 of a pound to about 1/2 of a pound of pork. I'm using pork butt because this is what I have in my freezer. If you and your family, traditionally it's made with a lean pork, so if your family prefers meat that's not as fatty, please go ahead and get a leaner cut of meat, or you can go ahead and trim off all the fat. But I like a little bit of fat on my meat, so I don't mind that. You're also going to need 1/2 of a cup of raw rice. This is, I believe it's like cow rose or like a sushi type of rice. You don't have to use this rice if you don't have it, but my mom often tells me that if you use this kind of rice, it makes your congee a little bit more fragrant, or in Cantonese we would say heng, or in Mandarin it's xiang, so 比较香味道. So I would use this one, but if you have jasmine rice, then go ahead and use that. And then you also need 5 rice bowls. I don't have the exact measurement. It's about 1 cup, 1 1/3 of a cup, but it's 5 rice bowls of water, which I've already boiled. And this is a really important thing. This is probably the hardest thing that you have to do, is to boil this water. So make sure that it's hot. And then I have 2 additional items which you don't have to put in there, but my mom does. And this is dried scallop, which I've already washed. Typically you want to get these at one of those like Chinese dried goods stores, or like a Chinese medicine store. Sometimes they have it at the front of supermarkets, like at Ranch 99 and stuff, but this gives it a really nice seafoody, and you can see it's already kind of breaking apart. You don't even have to break it. It gives it a really nice seafoody flavor. And then the next item is dried oyster. I don't know what these are called in Mandarin, but in Cantonese this is gong yu chu, and then this is ho si. So dried oyster, also found in the same spot. You only need about 3, 4 maybe if you want to have a stronger seafood flavor, but these really give your congee a nice umami flavor, I want to say. But these are totally optional, and you don't have to put those in there. So let's get started. Okay, parents, so the first thing that I'm going to do is I went ahead and turned my crock pot on. If you don't have one of these, I really highly suggest getting one. It's a really excellent kitchen tool to have to cook stuff low and slow. It's like an all-day type of thing. And you don't even have to do anything to it. You just throw everything in the pot and it does everything for you. This is what we're going to do with the jok. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put my meat in there. It's still frozen. I'm just going to put it in the pot. I actually plugged it in and I put it on high. There's 3 settings. Low, high, and then I keep warm. So I'm putting it on high. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put in my 1/2 cup of rice, which I already rinsed 3 times. Everything in the bowl. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add my dried scallops, and then my dried oysters. Again, you don't have to have that. My knob of ginger. Now, there's 2 ways you can do it. You can slice it and throw it in there, but I remember when I was a kid, I hated accidentally scooping a piece of ginger and then biting into it. That was the worst thing ever. So if your kids are like that, don't do that. Do this instead. Take a big butcher knife, and then be very careful. Make sure, if it's not flat, you can cut a little piece off to make it flat. And then just place the knife on top, and then with my fist, I'm just going to 3 times, and look, smashed for me already in the pot. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to peel and dice up my 1,000-year-old egg. If you never had a 1,000-year-old egg before, they're also called century eggs. This is a Chinese delicacy. I'm not sure if any other countries eat it other than Chinese people, but it's really popular to eat with porridge for breakfast. Cantonese people even cook it with spinach and stuff like that. But anyways, it's usually made with a duck egg or maybe a chicken egg, and they preserve it. It's basically a preserved egg, and this was back for preservation days when there was no refrigeration. They would preserve it with ash and clay and I forgot, there's like a whole bunch of other things, but it turns out a really funky color. So I mean, I'll show you what it's gonna look like. So I'm gonna go ahead and break it like a regular egg, and then the shell is like really hard. It's weird, but look at that, it's black. It's so crazy looking. I remember when I was a kid, I actually didn't like pitan, but as an adult, I love it, and it almost has like a mushroomy type of flavor to it, but it's not. It's almost like a rubbery texture. It's so weird. So if you know your kids don't like this, you don't have to put it in, but then it won't be a皮蛋瘦肉粥. So if you want to have that皮蛋瘦肉粥, you really need this. I'm just gonna give it a quick rinse. Make sure there's no shell on it, and then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna slice it in half. Be very careful, and then look at the inside. It's so strange, but it's really, really good. I would say if you've never had it before and you enjoy mushrooms, kind of has that same concept of that mushroomy flavor. Definitely has like a preservedness to it, but it's really good in this congee because you can't super taste it. It just gives it like a, kind of like how Italian people use anchovies to cook in their pastas. It gives it like a nice saltiness or a nice umami flavor. So anyways, I quartered it, and I'm just going to chop it in half one more time. So I have 8 pieces, and I'm just going to dump it in. And I'm going to scrape my knife. I want all that good stuff. If you have 2, you can totally put 2. I only had 1, so I might ask my husband to buy some tomorrow after work. And okay, so in comes the water. Really, really important to use hot water. Why? If you use cold water, the cooking process is going to take like an extra like 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 hours. So using hot water will definitely speed up the process. Now, how did I measure it? There's a couple ways you can measure. My mom always told me to use a rice bowl. This is a typical rice bowl size. I measured it. It's about 1 1/3 cups, but if you want to do it the way my mom does, she just pours it into a bowl, and then she just measures it that way. So I already measured this out. This is 5 bowls, and I'm going to go ahead and just dump it all in. So if you look in the pot, it just about covers everything. You don't want to put too much water because you can always add more water later. And that's it. It's done. I put on the lid. Do this before you go to sleep. Leave it on high. And this thing will do all the cooking for you. You'll wake up in the morning and your whole house is going to smell so delicious, like someone's been cooking in your kitchen all night. Well, it has. Your Crockpot's been doing it for you. So we'll come back in the morning. I would say to let this cook at least 6 to 8 hours overnight, or if you want it for dinner, you can start it in the morning or afternoon and it'll be ready by the evening. So we'll see you tomorrow morning. We're going to go to sleep now. Good night. So parents, I totally forgot to mention this. Not only am I going to put it on the high setting, I'm also going to put a timer because I don't want it to continually cook for too long in case I end up sleeping in or whatnot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a timer, and this one has a timer, and I'm actually going to set it for 6 hours. So you can see my crock pot goes by 30-minute intervals. I'm going to do 6 hours, and then once the 6 hours is over, it's going to automatically jump to keep warm. So it's going to keep it nice and hot and continue to cook down the meat if it hasn't 100% cooked down. You know, most of us probably, if we go to sleep at, let's say if you plug this in at 10 o'clock, it will definitely be ready by the next morning. So 8 o'clock in the morning, no problem. So for now, I'm just going to do 6 hours. If you want to set it for a little bit longer, you can, but my mom always says 6 hours is fine. So see you in the morning. Good morning, everyone. It's been 6 hours and I slept, and my pot's been on keep warm for a few hours now. Mama's gonna go check on the juk. You want to check on the juk? Okay. And I'm gonna lift it up and show you what it looks like. Ta-da! That is some good looking juk or zo or congee. People also call it porridge. And I'm going to show you how it has the skin that's formed around. That's okay. Just push it back in. I'm just going to give it a quick stir. Make sure nothing's stuck on the bottom. And it looks so good. Look at that. Everything's still kind of intact. But this is that pitan, or the 1,000-year-old egg. It kind of broke down already, but it's still in chunks. You can still see my dry oyster. It's got reconstituted and it's plump. And then look at that meat. That big piece of meat that I had in there totally shrunk down. I'm going to fish it out. Put it in a bowl. And I'm going to chop it up with a food scissor. And then while I'm here, I'm going to take out those gingers, because I know my husband doesn't like getting a chunk of ginger in his porridge. So I'm going to try to take all that out. And then look, my dried scallop is nice and soft and broken down. Okay, and then I'm going to show you how to prepare the meat to put it back in the pot. Okay, parents, so this is what you're going to do with your meat. I would highly suggest using some kind of food scissor, or a scissor that you would use to cut food, instead of using like a fork to shred it, because when you shred it, it makes your meat stringy. And that's not the texture that you want for your porridge. You want everything to be like a nice smooth consistency, and then have small chunks of meat. So I'm just going to go ahead and just start, and you can see it's really soft. I can actually just pull it apart with my scissor, but I don't want it to shred. This is what my mom always asked us to do. It's a good way to get your kids to do this for you, especially if you're busy and you don't have time. And I loved doing this when I was a kid. My brother and I actually used to fight over who was going to cut the meat for the juk. So you just cut it and cut it and cut it. It's just a great motor skill for your kids to learn. I even did this when I was little, because the scissors were too big for my hands, especially a food scissor. But if you really want to, you can always wash a kitty scissors really well with some soap, dish soap, and they can use that too if you're okay with that. But otherwise, when I was little, we had, just those metal food scissors, not these better ones like they have nowadays. And I just did this. I think I started doing this since I was like 3 or 4. I come from a family of 4, so my mom always tried to give us things to keep us busy. So, okay. That literally only took like not even a minute. So look, it's nice and chopped up. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to dump it back in the pot. Alright, so in goes the meat. Everyone in the pool. I'll scrape the rest of that out with my spoon. My cameraman, aka my husband's at work, so I'm trying to do this by myself, so pardon the weird camera angle. Alright, I'm going to give it a gentle stir. Don't stir it too much. You can see that little piece of meat actually became a lot of meat. Really, it's up to your family if you want more meat or not. I think this is a really good amount. To my mom, this actually might be too much meat. And look, it really didn't make super a lot. This is good for like 2, 3, maybe even 4 people, depending on how much you want to eat. My mom used to double the recipe, and it makes a big crock pot like this much. And this is I believe this is an 8-quart crock pot. So imagine if you, I came from a family of 6. There's 4 kids and 2 adults. So my mom would always double this recipe. And she would make it the night before she goes to sleep. And then she would go off to work. And then when we would wake up, then we would have porridge ready for us for breakfast. And then we would eat it throughout the whole day because it's just in this crock pot. So double the recipe if you want a big pot. This is only half a cup of rice. And it made, I don't know, I'm going to guess maybe like 2 to 3 bowls. This is probably just enough for me and my husband, but depending on how much you eat. But look at how silky that texture is. This is what congee is supposed to look like. When you go to Hong Kong and you eat it, go to a restaurant to eat it in the morning, dim sum, this is the kind of texture you want. And I did not have to stand over the stove all day and stir it. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to prepare it. Okay, parents, so before serving, we have to season our porridge. Now, you don't have to heavily season because you do want to allow your guests or whoever you're serving it to season their own. Typically, congee that's served in Hong Kong is not super salty, so that patrons can add their own. So, to the pot, you don't have to add this if you don't want to. My mom does, and so I do too, because mom's way is always the right way, right? I'm going to put a little sprinkle of chicken bouillon in there. Probably like, I don't know, half a teaspoon's worth. Start little and then see how much you might need at the end, right? So then, and then I'm still going to put a little bit of regular salt, just like about that much. And let's see. I'm going to give it a stir. Remember, there was no salt in here at all. So, give it a good stir. I suggest to season it at the end because you don't want to be left with a overly salty porridge, and then the only way to fix it is to add more rice or more water, and that's going to be impossible at this point. So I'm going to give it a really quick taste with my clean spoon, and I might add a little more. I'm going to put chicken bouillon. You can also put MSG if you want. Sometimes I do if you want that extra oomph of flavor. I know some people may feel differently about MSG, but that's why so much Chinese food is so good, because they do, most of them put some kind of MSG. So I'm not a hater of MSG as long as you eat it in moderation. So another stir. And then let's give it one more try. So much better. So good. Silky bits of meat in there. You can taste the Belgian yellow egg. So this is how I would serve it. You're going to scoop your bowl. And I'm going to put a small sprinkle of white pepper powder. Really important, that's white pepper powder. You can use black pepper powder, but traditionally in Hong Kong they use white pepper powder. It has a different pepper taste to it. It's a little bit more mild, and it gives it like a nice pepper flavor. And you can use chopped up green onions, which is what I'm going to do. And then this item is not a traditional item. My mom always gave this to us. So I love my porridge with cilantro. I'm going to put a little cilantro in there, and then if you want additional flavor, you can add a small splash of fish sauce. I know it sounds really weird, but my mom's from a region in China that fish sauce is the predominant flavor that they use. So that's what we grew up with in our house. If you don't have fish sauce, or if you're not a big fan, then go ahead and take that out and use more salt if it's not salty enough for you. So take a look. It's nice and silky, and I love congee any time of the day. When I'm not feeling well, when I'm sad, I need something comforting for breakfast, lunch, dinner, snack, midnight snack, any time of the day. This is my ultimate comfort food. It always reminds me of my mom and growing up. And yeah, I hope you give it a try, and let me know what you think. Thanks. Cheers.